Welcome back. Chapter 34, Wednesday, June 5th, 2017. Wednesday morning was groggy in New York, the 5th of July. The city began to feel late Monday evening, and the streets were moderately crowded Wednesday morning with those who did not tack onto the long weekend. Busy but light, the traffic crept along with a smoother consistency that would be typically for the middle of the week. Tomorrow, things would be back to normal. Sydney watched from her network office as the thin crowd shuffled in unison along the sidewalks and traffic shifted and halted at intersections. She had worked every day of the weekend, including the 4th. She and Leslie had finished cutting and editing the sixth episode, her best yet, that contained the rehashing of the Dr. Cuddy's experiment that showed the impossibility of Julian's injuries being caused by the paddleboard or the reenactment of the crime scene and the teaser footage that introduced a more logical explanation for the blood found in Grace Sugar Beach cottage. The episode ended with the suggestion that the so-called bleach cleanup of Grace's bathroom was a torture hypothesis made by St. Lucia's detectives that picked their suspect at the outset of their investigation and forced every finding during their search for answers to match that narrative. Sydney and Leslie had created another explosive installment, and Sydney could hardly wait to screen it for the suits before the episode aired on Friday. She paced the conference room now. The holiday weekend could either help or hurt ratings. If enough people went out of town and forgot about the girl of Sugar Beach, her ratings would slip. More than anything, Sydney was worried about how she fared against Luke's Barrington White House special. The room filled slowly over 15 minutes. Network executives, TV personalities, producers, and writers talked about where they spent the long weekend and when they got back in town. Graham Cromwell prepared the projector and tapped on his computer while everyone took their places at the table. Graham took a minute to prepare his presentation, then pointed to the only empty seat in the room. "Sorry, we're just waiting for Luke," he said. "He's coming from the Hamptons and running a few minutes late." "Maybe we should start without him," Sydney said. "I thought about it," Graham said, "but his special aired this weekend and he wants to be here for the discussion." "Then he should have come into the city last night like everyone else." "Settle down," Luke said in his deep, practiced voice as he strolled through the door. Not due on air until evening. He was ridiculously dressed in a long-sleeved golf sweater and short shorts, which bared his pale, liver-spotted legs. It was his routine to attend morning meetings and go through show prep before hitting the course at noon and returning in time to record his show. As the network's primetime rating king, only Luke Barrington was allowed such a schedule. "I'm not even technically late." He looked at his watch. "I take that back. I'm 1 minute late. You'll all forgive me?" He lifted his Starbucks cup. They had to brew it while I waited. Otherwise, I'd be drinking from the bottom of the barrel. "You know what that's like," he said to Sydney. "Coffee grounds and bitterness." Graham brought the screen to life, and several schematics appeared. It drew everyone's attention immediately away from Luke, who shuffled along the side of the table and found his seat. Graham covered the news segment ratings, down as they typically were during the holiday, but on par with other networks. He then reviewed the other primetime programs, leaving Luke Barrington's White House special until the end. "Okay, that leaves Luke's and Sydney's, whose specials are leading the way. Luke, great job. Friday installment brought a 2.6 million total viewers with a typical breakdown in demographics that we usually see with your audience. There was no murmurs around the table. The silence was worse. Projecting numbers had been 4 million total viewers. You gained on Saturday night, up 300,000, fell slightly on Sunday, and then had a great ending on the eve of the 4th. Monday night numbers were just over 3 million. Huge success. Luke lifted his chin to acknowledge Graham, but his eyes gave away his disappointment. Finally, Graham said, the Girl of Sugar Beach continues to surge. Episode 5 on Friday night played to the biggest audience yet. Fueled by word of mouth and a cover piece in Events magazine, Friday's installment pulled 19 million total viewers. Demos are great, with all the keys met and exceeded. 18 to 25 is through the roof, which is driving ad revenues. Graham looked at Sydney. We are heavily promoting the teaser over the next 48 hours, promising an explosive development that challenged the forensic and blood evidence key to the case 10 years ago. Sydney and Leslie provided a rough cut, and I screened it this morning. It's an amazing production and a blockbuster episode. Really, you two, it's the best you've done yet. Thank you, Sydney said. Leslie cut in the episode, and she's doing an amazing job. Sydney's getting the footage, which makes my job easier, Leslie said. You make a good team. We all know you're putting in the hours and are fully committed to this project. Everyone is impressed and grateful for your effort. The conference room broke out in applause. Sydney and Leslie acknowledged the support from their colleagues and made sure to recognize their crew for all their hard work. Sydney looked down the table at Luke Barrington, who wore a paper-thin smile and never put his hands together. I bet not. That's the end of chapter 34. Chapter 35, Wednesday, July 5th, 2017. Jason walked into the room and stopped when he saw the empty bed. Then he noticed Gus in the bedside chair. You're up early, Jason said. How'd you manage the chair? Gus grunted as he repositioned himself. Nurse Ratched. Jason offered a confused look as he walked to the computer stand, opened Gus' chart, and reviewed what he'd missed over the long weekend. Thought you two weren't talking. We're not, but we're pretty good at grunting at each other. I couldn't sleep, and she got tired of me constantly ringing the nurse station, so she helped me move at about 3 o'clock this morning. And by helped me, I mean she threw my she threw my ass in a chair while wearing gloves and trying not to catch cancer. Glad you guys are working things out, but 3 hours is too long to sit, big boy, so back to bed. Gus shook his head. I can't do the bed right now. Your other option is to stand for a while, crutches or walker. Walker, Gus said without hesitation. He could see it caught Jason off guard. Gus had refused the goddamn walker every other time it had been offered because it meant he needed to use his prosthetic. Jason slowly nodded his head. Be right back. A minute later, he returned with an ugly metal walker, the legs of which were capped with tennis balls to quiet the device from rattling against the linoleum floors of the rehab prison. It was a hideous-looking thing meant for the weak and the elderly, but the long holiday weekend had lit a fire. Since 3 in the morning, when he finished watching the 5th hour of the documentary about Grace Abode, Gus had a desperate urge to get the hell out of this place. For the first time since retirement, when he handed over his badge and gun, he had something he needed to do. He had something to chase other than an afternoon whiskey buzz, which, he had to admit, had been working just fine as a way to occupy his retirement until the pain started in his hip. The cancer diagnosis had promptly taken away his whiskey afternoons back then, and without too much of an introduction, it stole his leg a week later. The black abyss of depression had licked at his heels during those tough days of chemotherapy when the poison nearly killed him, but had no effect on the tumor. More than once, he considered allowing the despair to engulf him, give in to the depression and the cancer, and just let it all in. He had no kids, and his wife had passed more than 20 years ago, so no one would really miss him when he was gone. And when his options had been laid out in front of him, Gus decided that he had no desire to live the rest of his days with only one leg. He still wasn't sure what had changed his mind, and he spent the last months wondering why the hell he had gone through the procedure that had made his life worse than when his right leg was withered with cancer. Now his leg and the cancer were gone, and a strange phantom pain was present that shot down to toes that weren't there. Apathy had overcome him in the days after surgery, so thick and heavy that it smothered all ambition to walk, to heal, to live. But damn if he hadn't found inspiration in the most unusual place, a documentary. His leg was gone, his badge retired, and his romance with whiskey would likely never be the same. But he had found over the weekend some unfinished business. It had never stopped gnawing at him, and if he were the self reflective type, perhaps he would even admit that what he found over the 4th of July weekend could explain the reason he had gone through with surgery. Somewhere during the 5th hour of the Grace Abode documentary, he decided that sitting in a goddamn hospital bed, feeling sorry for himself, was no way to chase down a woman who was guilty as sin. Oh, Gus knows something? Did he work on the case before? And now he know who did it? He said chase down the person that's guilty as sin. So it sounds like it's not Grace. And it's somebody he know. Okay, we gonna have to find out what he mean in the next chapters. Talk to you later. Bye.